First of all, thanks everyone for joining. I have the pleasure to introduce you to the API testing and validation using Postman and Charles Proxy workshop, hosted by Jesús Figueroa. Let's talk about a little bit about our host. He's a software quality assurance engineer from Mexico. He has graduated in mechatronics engineer, and he's currently working as a Q&A engineer for the client Simple Practice. Without further ado, I will pass the mic to Jesus.
Hey guys, I hope you're all doing good. Thank you, Belen, for the introduction. And as she told you, today we're gonna have an introduction or talking in general about the API testing and two tools that really helpful when we are performing this kind of testing. So the first thing is about API testing. So what's the API testing? It's in a few words, I will say like it's a way we test that the information we send and receive when we are working with an application works as expected, which means that if we are storing new information, it gets stored, and if we are requesting some information to see, it is retrieved correctly. So we're going to talk about Postman and Charles Proxy, so we're going to see a little bit of them when we get to that point. So first of all, I don't know if you could go to the next slide, please. So first of all, we're going to talk about the API testing in general. So an API is an application, a programming interface. As I mentioned, is in general words, it's the way we communicate and we retrieve and send some information through applications. And why it's important, whenever we are making some new changes or building new features in a web application, it's important to make sure that it is actually working, referring to the communication between the server and the client or the host client. So, which means, like for example, if I create a website and I'm gonna store some users there, and these users are going to create some accounts within the site. I have to make sure that first of all, these new users can be stored correctly. So whenever they log in, they try to log into the website to use any tool within it, it actually works. Like the user and password is recognized. Also, any information that we have in the website, like that, it has to be like requested and displayed, that this communication is made correctly, and we are able to get and retrieve that information. So it's really important, especially when we are working on new features, as I mentioned, or updating existing features. So we want to make sure that nothing gets broken and everything works as expected for the final user. And it's always thinking about the final user and the usability that the software has. So we have a thing with the integration and testing and the API testing that we can later we want to see an image to better show this. But usually, per my experience, most of the time we get a little bit confused between integration and API testing. Sometimes we call integration testing the API testing, which is not 100% wrong, but the API testing is larger than that. It covers more spaces than that. So it's even if it's not UI visible for us, it is there. Anytime we are performing different kind of testings, like functional testing or component testing or integration testing, we are most of the time requesting or sending some information through the site. And even if we don't see it, we are working with this tool. I also want to mention something really important with this that is related, that is common, especially when we talk about API, which is the acronym CRUD, which means create, read, update, and delete, which we're going to talk a little bit further next. Next slide. So I added this image because I found it pretty convenient, so we can have a better understanding of what is it like, the APIs. So we have a user or the end user. In this case, for this example, we can imagine we go to a restaurant, we are the customers, and we have a menu or in different things that we can request within the restaurant. So whenever I call the waiter to make an order, maybe a glass of water, a meal, or something, it's what the APIs do. So let's think about the waiter as the API. So we send our request, we ask for a meal, the waiter takes this order and take it to the chef that we can call it the host. And so this host can process the information and send back what I asked for. Which is, let's suppose for this case, I ask for a glass of water, the waiter takes the order, goes to the kitchen with the chef, he prepares the glass of water and I receive the glass of water. If I don't receive this glass of water, or I receive something different, or maybe I receive the glass of water, but I also receive a glass of wine, the two of them. So I'm receiving some extra information. That's an issue, and that's a problem that we have to take care of. Always be we have to be clear about what we're asking and what we should receive. And especially when we're testing, we have to keep this in mind. So next slide, please. This also, I really like this image, and it's related to what I mentioned before. So API testing it's omnipresent in almost every part of our testing process or website. It is in the smoke testing, it is within a functional testing, integration testing, regression testing, because we end-to-end testing, because we are requesting or posting some information. Maybe I want to, if at the moment in my website, if I want to test that I can create a user. Let's talk about e-commerce website that I need to create a user, and then once the user is created, I want to make a purchase. So we are constantly requesting information. The moment I create the account, then I'm sending and posting some information. I'm going to create a user there. And once I'm browsing on the e-commerce site and I'm adding some items to the cart, and those items have to be stored within within a host server. And at the end, when we try to purchase them, that also has to be stored. And once we complete this request and all the purchase, we also send additional information about the remaining items, for example. So all this communication involves API testing or APIs in general. So that's why I really found this image pretty interesting, especially as I mentioned before, because per my experience, I've seen that sometimes we call it API testing and we only add the API test and we forget about the rest of the thing that can be tested or included on an integration testing, and we say like, oh, it's just that. So integration testing, let's think about when we have a feature or new features that are going to be integrated. And I want to make sure that these features can communicate among themselves, and that they are not breaking anything else within the web page. That's the integration testing. That's why it also can or may not involve API testing. So it is important. Usually, most of it can be covered by API testing, but it's not exactly the same. It's something that I want to make it clear. So also I talk about the acronym because it's interesting and it's useful. It's an easy way to call this, that we can create, read, update, and delete. So that's why it's CRUD. And each one is related to different methods within an API. For example, create, it's related to post. Read is related to get. Update is related to put. And delete is related to delete. And this is important because these four are the most common used methods within API calls. We have some others like patch, for example, it can be somehow used. And we have three of them, especially now that I mentioned patch, that can be kind of similar and be confused, which is create, update, and patch. So when we use create, we're submitting new information, totally new. It's a new space within the database. Update information, I mean that I'm getting an existing information, retrieving some information in the database, and I'm trying to update a value there. And we have patch, which we can relate it to partially update, which means that for put, we have to update the entire information or block of information within the database. For patch, we can partially update some information within the database. So that's the main difference between them. It's up over the developer team or anyone who's working on creating this communication, how are going to be used. So next slide, please. So the next one is what is Postman? Postman is a really popular feature, especially from when we talk about API testing, and it's, in a few words, it's a UI that we can use to interact with APIs, making it easier and faster to configure, create, read, and test these APIs. So basically, it's just an UI that has a lot of tools that that help us managing these APIs in an easier and faster way. So there are some basics that we have to understand about Postman. If you are familiar with it, you already know them, that we have the method. It's what I mentioned before. What we want to do: post, get, update, put, and or delete. We have the URL, that is where I'm sending or requesting this information, because if I don't have anything to interact with, so what's the meaning of it? I have to have the URL that I'm saying, okay, you're going to follow this path to retrieve or to send this information. So we have so many roads, but I want you to take this exact road for the information. We have the params, and here is that we can add additional information within this path or URL to be more specific about where and what to modify or add or test. We have the headers also. These headers help us to identify, and from my experience, they usually use for sending some extra information, like the versioning, for example, sometimes can be sent there. So we are correctly working with it. And we have the body. The body is usually with for post and put information, because usually we work with JSON. We can also work with XML, and it's the information that we send the block. So we add the block of the information here, and then we send this information so it can be processed. And we have the scripts. The scripts is in a space where we can add some testing. Postman allow us to test the information in the codes, the HTML codes as well, that we get when we are testing these features. And a good thing about this is they can be automated, and also most of them are like pre-filled, let's call it that way. So you can, the most basic ones, like checking the response code, is already there, or basic information, or testing some basic information within a JSON query, for example, it is there. It works with JavaScript, so if you have knowledge of Java or JavaScript, it shouldn't be a big issue to work with it. And also we have useful tools like the environments, especially when we have different servers in our project, and we want to test on a specific server, but we don't want to be changing the URL for each of our requests or create the same request for different servers. So we have the environment, we can create plenty of them, and then that way we can use the same call to work with different servers, just indicating which server we're working on. We have variables that these can also be added to the body, for example. They so make it easier when we have information that is going to be repeated, but sometimes need some modification. We can add these variables, which mean it's going to be easier to find them and edit them. And we can also import and export some API calls, which is really useful, especially if we have or we found the APIs in a different format, like CURL, for example. That can be really useful, and if we want to export our collections there. So for the next step, let's check out a few examples. And for that, I'm gonna share my screen. I have previously opened my here it is. Okay, so here is the platform. It is Postman. As you can see, as I mentioned, we have the collections here, which means we can create a bunch of calls for a specific feature or component, depending on our project. What we want to do is it's up to us how we want to organize our calls. We have here the environment, and I already created one that is pointing to this URL, and we're going to see why is this useful. Here is what I mentioned about the params. We have different params there, and here we have the we can choose through different environments to work with. So here we have the variables. It's important to notice this. So when we go to a call, as you can see here, I just added URL, which means that if I run this, I'm going to point to this URL, and I'm going to be working with that. If I had a different environment with another URL, I could just choose here, making sure that the variable is the same, just for a different variable, but it's the same variables. And as easy as we have it here, we just change here, and we're pointing to the desired server. So to show a little bit, just give me a moment. So we have here a pause call that is gonna try to create a new user. For this, we have an ID assigned to the user. We have a username, first name, last name, email, phone, and user status. So if we try to, once we have the information, we also have the headers here. We can see the params here. That is only the URL that we need in this case. We send the information, then we have to get a good status code, which is the 200, which means it's okay. And we're going to have a response. Sometimes the response could be the user successfully created, or sometimes he can just throw out different information. So for that same user, we can do a login. And here we have params, because we have to specify the user that we send in. So we have username, password. So if I send it, then I got a response that is login user and session. We have the headers, but it's important to notice this. Since this is just an example, I send the user and the password, and I send them through the URL. It's okay if you're like working or creating this the API, but if you are actually testing and if you ever found this, that the information, the username and password is not encrypted in the URL, you have to urgently create a ticket, high priority, high severity, because this is a leak of information, and anyone who has the URL can access actually to this user profile. So it's really important. For these cases, it's just to show you, but it must be encrypted in the URL. So also for a logout, we have a get, and the message that we get is the user has been logged out. Of course, to perform a logout, we have to be within the profile. It is done after. We have a put request. That it's mean in the body, I changed the name, and I changed the email, and also I changed the password. So if I send, that's a put. In this case, it failed. But as you can see here, we have an internal server error. When we have the error 500, that means that is the connection with the server, something failed. It's not necessarily means that the API call is failing. It's more about the response that is not connecting with the server. And same can happen with delete. So here we are. We have the same example, which means that somehow it's happening with the server. If you are a QA or a tester and you're doing this, is something you have to create a ticket and report so they can check what's going on with this connection. Why is working for the rest of them, but it's not working for these two calls. So I have also some additionals of them just to show you a little bit more. Like, for example, this API. It's like a Pokédex, if you know about Pokemon. So you can send any Pokemon you want the information, and you're gonna retrieve some information that is stored somewhere in a server in the internet. We can also have this one that is to get to post a pet within the store. So the answer that we get is it's been posted. We get the information that we send, and we get the code, and we can delete. This one is working, so that means that this block of information within the database has been deleted, and this is a way we can test. Different. It's also up to the tester / QA how you're gonna treat this information, what you're gonna actually test. So we get here we get a body in response, but depending on the case and where we're testing is what we're gonna do, or what we want to identify. Maybe we want to identify that some information is not retrievable. If we retrieve some information in the body, we have to report it. So that way is really useful when we're working with web pages or testing services to use this tool. There are other ways to test APIs, not only Postman, but as I mentioned, the advantages with Postman is that you have a UI, and it's really simple and intuitive to create and develop some collection calls. So I think that I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Could you share the? Okay. So in this space, before we continue with the next tool, which is Charles Proxy, I'll have to ask you if you have any question. If you don't, we can proceed with the next tool, which is an interesting tool. Okay, let's proceed with the next tool. What's Charles Proxy? Well, we mentioned about Postman, and now we call about Charles Proxy. Are they the same? Do they perform the same things or not? Maybe this feature could be new for a few of you or most of you. I'm not sure, but it's interesting because the best way I can explain this tool is it's like a like a gossiping tool. Like, it's there trying to get some information. I mean, it's something can be invited to the conversation, but it's not part of the conversation. With this, I mean, if I'm sending some information, a request, a call, through this tool, I can be in the middle and get that information and check what's going on with that information. Check the way it should be displayed in all or anything that I'm looking for. Like, for example, if I perform a login and I send a user and password, so I can be in the middle of this connection, get that information and check like, oh, the user is not encrypted. And you can tell like, but we already saw that in the URL in the past example with Postman. Well, but or we can check that in the browser with the dev tools and the network tab. We can check that as well. But how about when you're testing mobile applications or in a device application? You don't have access to see what's going on. It's not like you're gonna open the dev tools and check how these calls are made and which information is gonna send. It's being sent and retrieved. So that's when this tool is really useful, especially for mobile apps, because then we have a way we can debug and get and check this information. So it's basically that. I think in that way, it's a good example I could show. I could mention about Charles Proxy. So we go to the next slide, please. So whenever we install Charles Proxy, we have this interface. That's the application, and even though it has a lot of tools, I choose these ones. The first one is certificates. It's really important. With the certificates is a way where we trust in the network, we trust an application or something to connect to someone. Um, so for example, I have to install our certificate and I have to trust the certificate. So that way, when our computer or firewall or anything that is could block this, uh, it's aware that something is trying to connect to this communication. Don't get locked and say, okay, I have the certificate, like it's like I have the license or I have the passport to access here and get the information. It's why it's important. If you don't have this, I'm sure that it's gonna fail. You have to do that. We have a tool about the clean tool. This tool is when we have a lot of calls and we maybe we can get a little bit lost, or we start a new session or something and we want to refresh everything, we can click on clean, and that's gonna help us a lot. We also have the record. This one, it's important. Sometimes you can wonder, why am I not getting any call within the app? And that's maybe because you're not recording. You have to start recording, which means you're going to start grabbing the calls or checking the traffic. And we have the method. Once we have a call, we can check which method we're talking about. We could be, as I mentioned, create, it could pause, get, put, and delete. And within this, we have the overview, the context, and the summary. We can check the headers. We can check the body that we sent. So we can have an image about this. So to have a better, or to show you a little bit about this tool, I'm going to proceed and I'm going to share my screen. I think I previously opened the tool. This one. Okay. So, okay. Here we have the app. I already opened it. And what I mentioned, if you want to install a new certificate, you have to go to SSL Proxy and install Charles certificate. If you want to do it on mobile, you have to install Charles certificate on a mobile device or remote browser. Something that I forgot to mention is that to use Charles Proxy, you have to pay. You need a license, but Charles Proxy allows you to play your practice with it because it gives you a 15-minute session, and with maximum of 30 minutes, I guess. After 30 minutes, it gets closed and you have to reopen it, and it's going to show a delay, which means that after a few minutes you're using it, it's going to show you a message about delaying. So it's just a way that they can encourage you to buy a license and start using the application. So also we have here the SSL proxy settings, which are important. And there's something I want to mention. We have to specify which road we want to take or see or retrieve the information. So to do that, we have to add the host URL and the port. Usually for most of the web pages, we have the port 443. But sometimes, depending on the application and the configuration the application have, it could have a different port. So it's important to specify. So let's imagine like it is like a border control. So between a country, we have borders. We want to cross that border, but we have different ports, entry ports. So it's important to specify which port we have to cross and which road we have to follow. Is basically that. As you can see, I have added two here, one for the pet store and the other one for the Poke API, so I can make sure I can get that information. So here are the options that I mentioned: to clean, to record. We can also test and slow down the network connectivity and see how these calls perform. That can be useful in some cases. And here is what I mentioned about the information that we can get there. So we have the overview, which we have like a general information about the call. We have the contents of the call. Here's an answer. This one was a get, and this is the answer that we get, the message. We have the headers as well. We can have a summary, chart, note, but usually most of the testing is done through the content. And here for the answer, we can have different ways to review them. We can check the headers and text, hex, JavaScript, JSON, JSON text, and raw. It's up on what we're checking, how we want to check it, or the way we feel more comfortable working with. So now I previously integrated, not integrated, but made a Postman and Charles Proxy to work together, so I can show you in a better way how this communication works. So to do that, if you wonder how, you go, just go to settings. This is Charles Proxy. Sorry, I got confused. So you have to go to proxy settings here and check which port you're working with. And then you can go to Postman, settings. You go to proxy, and you have to use custom proxy and have the proxy server and the port. This is important because if we don't have this, the communication is not gonna be done there. So we're gonna take this call here, and I'm gonna send this call, and let's see what's happened with Charles. Here we have, as you can see, the call is a get call, is a get method. We have the URL, and we have all the information that we retrieve. So in Charles Proxy, we go, and we gotta make sure that's true. So I have the method. Here I can have it as well, the host, and I have all the URL here. And if I go to the information, I see that, for example, in this case, the first block of information is abilities, ability name URL. If I go to here and check, I have ability name URL, which means that the information matches, which means that the Charles Proxy effectively is getting the information that we are passing. Let's now check this one, that is to create a user. So I'm going to click on post. I'm going to go to Charles Proxy. I'm going to check the call, and here it is. Here we have the contents. Since it's a post and we sent information, we can check the information that has been sent and the information that is retrieved after we created this user. So this is basically a walkthrough Charles Proxy. As I mentioned, it's a useful tool. I really recommend you. Maybe in your project you could add it. You can suggest it, because it's useful, especially if you're working with mobile. It's a better way to debug and make sure that the information is working. So yeah, I don't know if you have any question about this feature, about maybe anything related to Postman. This is the time.
I think we don't have any questions through the chat. Oh,
I have a question.
yes.
Hey, Jesus, nice presentation. I just have a question about the Charlie, our friend Charlie, and I'm wondering if it's possible to use it as a CLI. Like, I add it on the pipeline and test everything, and I don't know, test if the request is good or something like that. It is possible to add it in a pipeline, or it's just an UI.
So no, actually, as far as I know, by my understanding, per my experience, Charles Proxy is only a UI that you use to test. So it's mostly manual testing that you can perform through Charles. Maybe in the last versions, maybe they added something to work that way. I could check and send the information if you're still interested on it. But as far as I'm aware at this point, it is only the UI.
Sure. Thank you.
I think Fred raised his hand. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Fred.
Hey, Jesus, nice presentation. Just a question. From Postman, is it possible to create GraphQL calls on Postman.
What do you mean?
GraphQL calls where you can create a query and it consumes a kind of Apollo backend.
I'm not entirely sure I understand your question, but I don't think I worked with this before. If you let your question, I could search for that. It's not something I related to. So yeah, it's I can do a research on that. Sorry, I can't.
Yeah, it's basically typed over there. It's kind of use Postman
Mhm.
For GraphQL. Yes.
Okay. Paulo is he replied, thank you. So he said that it is possible. It's something that I haven't done before. So sorry, I could not help you with that.
That's all right. Thanks.
No problem. Okay, so I think we're good. So
Yes.
before we leave, thank you guys for joining. It's I really appreciate that your time on this presentation. I hope that it was helpful somehow for some of you.
Thanks, Figo. Thanks, everyone, for joining. I hope you enjoyed. We will share the record. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.